Hello, saver. Whether you're saving for that trip to the tropics or saving for an emergency, now is the time to take advantage of Wells Fargo's savings options. Wells Fargo offers savings accounts that can help you save towards your goals. So, what are you saving for? Visit a Wells Fargo branch or wellsfargo.com/save to open a savings account today.
Wells Fargo Bank, N.A., member FDIC.
Hey, it's Christine from Storyworthy. Today on the show, actress and comedian Mary Kennedy talks about how she was a roadie in her mother's band.
And so my mom was the house wedding band for the King's Grant Medieval Inn. And my mother would make sure that I was there and I would help her load in and load out. And I ended up being her roadie, and she would dress me up in her Marshall's business suit kind of clothing, and I played her manager, and I would make sure that the band got fed and that the band was safe and that the band got their drinks and their breaks. You know, I was propositioned many times as a 16-year-old looking 35, and I'd have to say my mother was the piano player in the band, and one guy said, well, she can join us. I said, you're an asshole.
Today on the show, comedian and actress Mary Kennedy talks about how she was a roadie in her mother's band, the Mood Swings. Stick around.
Hey, my name is Mary Kennedy, and you're listening to Storyworthy.
Welcome to Storyworthy. My name is Christine Blackburn, and I'm coming to you from Los Angeles, California. Whether you're a longtime fan of the show or a brand new listener, welcome to Storyworthy. I hope you guys enjoyed the story last week from comedian Greg Fitzsimmons. Greg Fitzsimmons was talking about getting ripped off by a comedy agent, which seems to be a reoccurring theme in the stand-up comedy world. But last week in the story that Greg tells, he got revenge, and it is pretty darn sweet. So go back, you guys. Listen to Greg Fitzsimmons last week on Storyworthy. But not today. Don't go anywhere now, because today I'm re-airing a show from actress and comedian Mary Kennedy. You've seen Mary on the show Shameless with William H. Macy. She plays the new Fiona. And she also plays clubs and towns all over the place. Mary also teaches comedy, so you know she knows her stuff. As you guys know, I'm taking a couple of weeks off and re-airing shows that you've already heard on Storyworthy, or maybe, and the odds are, you haven't heard it. I have over 800 stories in the catalog, so there's a lot to listen to. I've been spending a lot more time on my show, My Life in 3 Songs. It's exclusively on Spotify because it's a show about music. It's about comedians and music, and we actually listen to the 3 songs that the comedian chooses that has impacted their life. It really gives you a picture of where the comedian grew up and how they became who they are. So recently I had on Jackie Cation, I've had on Kevin Allison from the Risk podcast and The State, and I've had on Patton Oswalt and Jimmy Pardo. So head over there to mylifein3songs.com and you can see who else has been on the show, and head over to Spotify to find the show. Again, it's exclusively on Spotify. That's where you're going to find it. Do me a favor, follow the show and tell your 20,000 best friends. Would you? All right, you guys, she's here right now. Actress Mary Kennedy. What a blast. There's a lot of Mary Kennedys out there, but this one you can find over on Insta at @MKennedyComedy. All right, you guys, wherever you are, put your hands together for the very talented Mary Kennedy.
So a lot of people ask me where I got my start in comedy and why I'm a stand-up. And the reason is, ladies and gentlemen, is because when my parents got divorced when I was 10, my mom, to support us kids, she was a bookkeeper and also needed to make extra money, started a band in Massachusetts. And it was a wedding band. And my mother, so I remember the ink had not really dried on the divorce papers. We went to the court. We told the judge that, yeah, we wanted my mom to have custody. My father went his way. We saw him on weekends. My mother went her way, and we went straight to the little musician shop in Marblehead, right across the street from the high school. And my mother went in there and bought a Korg, huge, heavy Korg keyboard and a PA system. And, you know, she had piano lessons as a kid. She was in the church folk group. And she basically got in the car after putting the Korg in the back seat of our celebrity wagon and said, Mom's going to start a band. And she did. And the band consisted of 40-year-old divorcees singing Hot Stuff and Locomotion, called the Mood Swings. And isn't that fun? And I was her roadie. So at that point, I was young. I was 10. So she started, and by the time I was 16, I ended up being her roadie, and she would dress me up in her Marshall's business suit kind of clothing, and I played her manager, and I would make sure that the band got fed and that the band was safe and that the band got their drinks and their breaks. And so my mom was the house wedding band for the King's Grant Medieval Inn on Route 1 in Danvers, Massachusetts. And every weekend, 5 shows a weekend. And my mother would make sure that I was there, and I would help her load in and load out. And I was propositioned many times as a 16-year-old looking 35. And I'd have to say my mother was the piano player in the band. And one guy said, well, she can join us. I said, you're an asshole. This is 16, and my mother was a tough Boston mother, and she gave him two cents, and told him to go, himself. So it was an interesting childhood. I'm glad I got to do it because I got to really learn the business. But, I got to see the ins and outs of a wedding band as a roadie.
So, this is all stunning. First of all, how could you even carry the equipment? Some of the stuff must have been, I'm thinking of the amps and stuff. Like what?
We had dollies. My mother was a, as they say in the Irish culture, a sturdy woman, 5'10", and we'd put it on the dolly and we'd load it in. Plus she had a drummer and a bass player who were a guy. One of the drummers was a Broadway drummer. They would help load it in. I'd bring in the mic stands and the music stands and the costumes. And for her singers.
Oh my God, there were costumes?
There was costumes. There was a fog machine. There was,
Stop. See, you have so much more to tell me. So wait a second. Tell me about the costumes. Wait, what was it called? The King's Court or the King's Grant?
The King's Grant. So imagine. The King's
Grant. That's the name of the hotel.
Yeah. Imagine like a Best Western, it'll be our sponsor, a Best Western, is it the facade or the facade? The facade of the building were like these weirdo medieval, like, I don't know, just like medieval
like
things.
Medieval times. I know.
Like
Orange County.
Like a Ren fair. But you got to understand, we're in Danvers, Massachusetts, right next to where the witch trials were, right? Because it was actually in Danvers, not Salem, Massachusetts. We can talk about that at another time. But their decision was, let's make it a medieval wedding venue. And even more so it was medieval on one side, but then because we had the Boston weather, they had this like tropical oasis pool that was over chlorinated that they would have the wedding. If they wanted to do the wedding service into the reception, my mother would have to play her piano like in the most humid, bizarro inside pool while kids from other families would be sliding down the pool during the person's wedding.
That is so brilliant. You have got to put all that detail into that story you just told me, because seriously, this is damn funny. Wait a second. First of all, there's so many things to comment on. They wanted to do it in the pool because that's where they got good pictures. Was that the idea? They
got good pictures, and they felt that they were in Florida, which, if you from the East Coast, everybody's thing is we're going to Florida. Florida is a big thing. We're going to Florida. So instead of spending all that money to go and do a destination wedding, just come to the Medieval Inn. and we'll do. Yeah.
That is so outrageously funny. However, I grew up in Pittsburgh, and I know this is very plausible. I was a lifeguard at a Conley's Motor Inn, same thing for years. But I was only 16, and I would see, I would see the musicians coming in and setting up. And sometimes if I worked late on Saturdays, they would, already start, the band would start. So I'm very familiar with this scenario. And then I married a musician that was in a band like that. So it's then it became a nightmare. But the point is that 5 shows a weekend is successful.
Yeah, no, she was one of the best wedding bands on the North Shore of Boston. And and I got to, and then in the off season, she'd get gigs. And I remember we had a huge blizzard. And then there was the Swiss Chalet on Route 1 heading towards Boston that she did a gig. We almost got snowed in. And the booker didn't feed them. So I had to run over driving in the snow to a Pizza Hut and get their food. And, and my mother was pissed that I didn't get her the steak, tips, and rice from the store down the street. I go, Ma, we're in a blizzard. This is what you get.
Steak, tips, and rice. That is so funny. Mary, your Boston accent comes out in very specific words like Florida.
Yeah, Florida. Yeah.
and Ma, of course, is very specific. Did you have to try to unlearn the Boston accent?
Yeah, no, it was, I have a joke in my act about it, and it encompasses the whole thing. I said it was affecting my sex life. To have a night of heavy lovemaking. I turned to the guy next to me and I go, that's a wicked big pissy you got down there, huh? Go Pats. Go Pats. Yeah.
It's a great story, right? I told you. All right, you guys, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you so much for listening to Storyworthy this week. If you look closely at the logo, you'll see that I indicate that it's still Storyworthy, meaning that I aired it again. But who cares, right? A good story is a good story. And one more thing, guys. Story Smash, the storytelling game show, is this Saturday night. Don't miss Story Smash, the storytelling game show at the Lyric Hyperion, starting at 7:30, September 23rd. All right, you guys, one more time on behalf of the very talented Mary Kennedy, my name is Christine Blackburn, saying, make it a story-worthy week.
Thanks for joining us on the Storyworthy podcast. We'll be back next week with all new stories. Subscribe to Storyworthy on iTunes and visit the Storyworthy website at storyworthypodcast.com.
Wells Fargo presents one of the surest ways to grow your money. A Wells Fargo CD account, where you can earn a 5.00% annual percentage yield on an 11-month term with a minimum opening deposit of $5,000. Visit a Wells Fargo branch or wellsfargo.com/CD rates to open a CD account and start growing your savings with us.
Wells Fargo Bank, N.A., member FDIC.